PGA Nation, we are back and we are heading to Tokyo. A fun week, the ZOZO Championship. To me, this really feels like the kind of season kickoff. It's like the new season. It's the cool destination. Some of the big names are going to show up and play. I'm pretty excited for this week. Not a full field, but I wouldn't call it a full-on JV field. And it's also interesting because DraftKings doesn't like to compete with the NFL with golf, right? They figure people are putting their money in the NFL and in football, so they give us these kind of cheaper tournaments, if you will, not the best tournament selection. I think it's a little bit improved this week than it had been the last two. So they're playing up this tournament because of the field and the excitement around it. So it should be an interesting week, to say the least. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I don't know if I have the same excitement for this tournament that you do. Not the biggest fan of no-cut contests that have limited fields. I do think that with the way that I built my model this week, it's very unique and different, but I guess the answer to that would be, how different can you really get when there's only 78 players or whatever number we're actually looking at here that are teeing it up. So, I mean, we will provide the best information that the three of us can on this show. We will talk about the course. We'll talk about players we like, but I don't know if this would be the tournament that if somebody was getting into golf, that I would tell them to play the first time.
Fair. Probably not the first one, but I would assume the folks that are the Draftcast regulars, certainly not their first time getting into golf. So you know the drill. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. We had a bit of discussion off the air of who won last week, and I, of course, claimed victory. I do think I was the only one who had a 6 of 6 last week and had Adam Hadwin in second, Bo Hosler in 7th, Christian Bezadenhout was 20th. EVR had a really good week as well. So, EVR just continue. I hope that the bookmakers keep pricing him at 150 to 1, because he's like so close to an elite performance, and he's just, he was 6,800 in DraftKings last week. It was silly what they were doing to him out there. So, no, it was an awesome week. And then over on the DP World Tour, another one, 80 to 1, Matthew Pavon winning over in Open de España. And we've had this weird record with national opens this year. We picked the winner at the Irish Open, we picked the winner at the Canadian Open, we picked the winner at the US Open, and now we've picked the winner at the Open de France, as well as the British Masters, which isn't the British Open, but we'll claim it. There's a country in the name of the title as well. So we've been absolutely on fire this year. And if you had followed my selections in WinDaily Premium throughout this year, using $10 per unit, you would be up over $9,000 right now. So it's a no-brainer. Jump in the promo link in the description. Sign up now, because the tips have been absolutely on fire this year.
The heater is on, and of course, you never leave the table when you are on a heater. So we have a Draftcast tonight. Spence, you have your work cut out for you in the course breakdown. Not a ton of data on this course. What are you looking for?
Yeah, these venues that lack data are never going to be my favorite. I think they take away a lot of the handicapping strategy. I will say that I decided to get different. I think anytime you make this dynamically different blueprint from what you're looking for than other people, you obviously run a risk of it's going to be very boom or bust. For DFS, that's a good answer. Inside the betting market, there's other answers that you can give there. I'm going to have very limited exposure for this contest. Beyond anything else, I do want to say that this is a claustrophobic design. I don't want to discredit that stance with what I'm going to say here. We see substantial tree line intangibles that are going to be present throughout. That's going to create the need for golfers to move the ball in multiple directions because of the dog legs of the facility. Naturally, with that answer, that puts extra merit into that bucket of accuracy over distance when talking about a course that's sub 7,100 yards. I don't think it naturally presents that distance appeal. However, I'm going to say I don't think length is something that you should discredit this week when you build a model. Most of the impactful scoring from either a production or an avoidance answer will come with the driver in hand. We have 5 par 3s, which kind of already reduces the yardage total. You get it in other areas. We have 5 par 4 holes that range between 486 to 505 yards. That's going to rank as the most challenging locations for the week. You also have these 3 par 5s that are between 562, 587, and the behemoth that is 608. That 608-yard hole only yields a 21.9 birdie or better rate. That's going to be one of the lowest percentages that you'll see all season at any stop. We obviously can try to extrapolate out a lot of those numbers that I've talked about. I think that can give you a little bit more of an advanced opinion when you're building this. But anytime you get one of these no-cut contests, a smaller field narrative, all of these things coming to the forefront of the equation here, I am just not super pumped. Like, obviously, we try to be honest on this show. We're trying to win money at the end of the day. I am kind of a straight shooter with it. If it's not my favorite tournament, I'm just going to say how it is with it. There's maybe some ways that we can look at this. Like, you have to be cognizant that all these holes will have 2 pin locations. That's something that the golfers are going to need to be aware of. You do get this soft surface that is on the speedier side of things. That's a unique complex, if nothing else. But as you said at the beginning of this, Joel, it makes for a very difficult way to try to run a model this week, because a lot of these answers, I don't want to run into a spot where I take such a firm stance on something and then you find out numbers are completely wrong and you have, 10 head-to-head wagers and you're scrambling to get out of an opinion here. So very light week for me across the board.
You left out one major factor about this week of what makes it so exciting. You get to watch golf in Japan at night, not in the morning. It starts at like 7:45 at night our time. So it's just fun. That is the fun part. Now, all the points you made are very fair. But it's just the way you want to phrase it, right? Like, there's a lot of similarities to this in terms of handicapping, except for the course data that we lack, to the end of the year, right? When you start getting to the FedEx Cup and they start eliminating guys and there's no cut anymore. Maybe not as much the point differential, but it is a different type of tournament. You're going to see ownership a little bit higher than normal because of the smaller field and things like that. So it's just different. Some of the different stuff to think about in handicap and trying the best to have some fun with it. So
I think really quickly before we move on past the point, the one thing, and you bring up a good point with that, but the one thing I don't like about this tournament beyond anything else, the bottom of this board gets really weak very quickly on it. I think it removes a lot of playable commodities, because at least when we're talking about the FedEx Cup, you can dip down into the bottom and feel comfortable with a lot of these plays. I don't know. I have 5 to 7 players in the 6,000s, not to give away too much strategy, that I do like this week. But I think most of the names are kind of unplayable. And I know that's a different answer than most people would expect. With this being a no-cut tournament, people love that boom or bust mentality with it. But I don't know how much boom we actually have down in that 6K range, outside of about 5 or 7 golfers, if we want to get technical by my model's sense of it. But it just makes it a little bit more challenging to get different with such a small field.
Totally fair. It's a totally fair point. Especially, if comparing to the FedEx Cup, those are all the best golfers in the year.
Yeah.
So every guy in the FedEx Cup is going to be playable. Here, I totally agree. There's an easy, for me, it's an easy fade of, maybe the bottom 10 to 20%. So, to some people, that's a good thing. It's an easier way to narrow down your player pool. To others, it does make things more challenging. So we do have a draft ahead of us. Very excited. David went ahead as the winner that he self-proclaimed, not confirmed, gave himself the first pick. I am going second. Audience, for a change, is going third, not back-to-back. So, audience, I already tell you're hot in the chat. We're going to need you on your toes tonight, getting those nominations in. Spencer, fourth. For those new to the show tonight, as a quick reminder, this works like your typical fantasy football draft. It's a snake-style draft. Spencer will have 2 picks on the wheel before we go back. The one caveat is you do need to stay within your DraftKings salary. So you can't just take all the best players. You do need to make sure you draft knowing you can afford all 6 guys on your roster. Without further ado, David, with the first pick, you're on the clock.
Not only the self-proclaimed winner, but the actual winner, because I was the only one who went 6 for 6 last week, as well as having second place. And no one had Tom Kim. But good news, this is a no-cut event. So the rest of you can join me and have a 6 of 6 lineup this week. And we'll see who wins then. So with the first selection, I agree with Spence. This is a really difficult course to handicap. And I actually think that a lot of the form lines go from last year's winner, Keegan Bradley, and you can see some correlations in courses where he's played really well. And then likewise, that's moved through some of those lesser players like Brendan Steele, for example, who has a really good record around Narashino and has played at similar courses. And so that's shaped in many ways my first selection, which is the top of the board, is Xander Schauffele. I think that he possesses a huge amount of win equity here. He's won the Travelers Championship in 2022, just like Keegan Bradley did this year. So they've got that in common. He's also won at the All White TPC, which Keegan Bradley had a very good record around and correlates very well here as well through, again, multiple different players. And then Bridgestone and the Bridgestone Firestone South course is a very, very good correlation course as well. And Xander's got a great record there. Xander's just like Mr. Consistent this year. Like since March, he's only finished outside the top 25 on one occasion, and he finished 42nd at the Scottish Open, which we know can be a pretty volatile event, just in terms of like exposed nature and wind and gusts and things like that. So he's just consistently been performing above his pay grade, really. And all he really needs to do is go and get a win. And it would be very typical Xander just to like travel, go get a win. Obviously, he played very well here when he won the gold medal as well at the 2020 Olympics. So there's a lot going for him. I just think he's also too cheap at 11,100. I think he's just a little bit ahead of all those underneath him. If you put him 11.5 or 11.8, I wouldn't have had too much trouble with it.
There you have it. No complaints here. I mean, Xander Schauffele is probably the best talent in this field, definitely top 3. I can certainly see coming away with a win. Spence, how about you? Are you playing Xander at all this week?
Yeah, deserving favorite, 33 consecutive made cuts, which will become 34 since he can't miss the cut at this event. But I do think he is the top of this class. Obviously, ownership's going to go to him, but I think it's rightfully so.
There you have it. All right, that puts me on the clock. I am really stuck between 2 picks. I'm going to go ahead and commit to Colin Morikawa. We're going to go right back to the top. I think in this field, I do think very much so this is a stars and scrubs week. I think the combination of not having to worry about anyone missing the cut, so getting those 4 days. And I do think the top of this field, the top 5 to 8 guys, I think are significantly better than the rest of the field. So I want to try and cram, 2 of those guys in, 3 if I can, and then find a way. Like when I say scrubs, Spencer's right. Like I don't want to just go to the bottom and pick any 3 guys. I do. There is intent behind how I want to do my stars and scrubs, but getting a couple of those top guys, I think, is going to be a priority. And Colin's certainly up there. I mean, he with Xander, with Ricky, could be the best. With Sungjae, could be the best talent in the field, right up there. He's playing good golf. We saw him go through a low last season. He's playing better. So I think Colin can go out there in what, to me, is an approach course, a second shot course, and put on a show. So I like Colin here at 10-8. How about you, Spence? You playing Colin at all?
So that's actually where I was planning to go with my pick. I just think when you look at Morikawa's profile, and I'm not usually a Morikawa guy, I was surprised that my model landed under the mindset it did with him since I took such a distance-heavy approach compared to most that are in the space. But there are so many high-end returns that other players in this field couldn't match. When we look at his weighted proximity, the GIR percentage, the recent ball striking, the weighted scoring, really the only person that had larger upside in my model would be Xander. Morikawa is the second favorite in the market and the second favorite in my sheet. So I think it's a very logical route for the second name off the board.
I love it. I love it. Now, tracking the audience here, it looks like the pick is in. It's a good pick. I mean, obviously, we just mentioned him. Sungjae Im, it's the right route. Same strategy I was saying. Get you one of those stars. He's certainly up in that upper echelon tier. David, are you playing Sungjae at all this week?
Yeah, I think Sungjae's a good play this week. I mean, obviously, he's already acclimatized a bit to being in Asia. He was in Korea a couple of weeks ago, or last week, actually, where he finished runner-up. So he's already spent some time around there. And he kind of fits the all-round profile that you need at this course. Like, I don't think driving distance is the be-all and end-all, but I do think just you need an overall good driving off the tee game. You either need to be hitting fairways consistently or you need to be out driving the competition, or one of those 2 things. And it's one of those classically, like, tree-lined golf courses as well. And I always hate to use Augusta as like a comp course, but like it kind of is like Augusta. And the reason why I hate that is because Augusta is just like one of the best fields in the world, right? So it's like, oh, the guy who played well at the Masters like played well here. Like it's kind of like saying like, oh, Tiger Woods played well at this course, so like therefore like he's the form link, because like Tiger Woods played good at every course because he's just like really good at golf. But yeah, look, Sungjae has got a very, very good record at the Masters and probably above where you would expect him to have performed on other courses. So I do like that correlation. Just to throw a cat amongst the pigeons with Morikawa, I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts of the fact that we've got some extremely high winds the first 2 days. And I feel that Morikawa, we've kind of got a thing going now with him in high winds not being a great play. So I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts just in terms of the wind factor. Day 1 looks pretty windy. Day 2 looks extremely windy, like gusts up to 70 miles per hour.
I guess I'll take it first just because and I've heard that a lot in the space with Morikawa. My model doesn't necessarily see the same factors when I run the data behind it. Doesn't mean that my model's correct with that. Obviously, he's a very precise iron player, and I think that's where a lot of that answer comes from with it. But my map liked him fine in windy conditions, like very blustery conditions.
Yeah, and I would say, of course, it's something to think about. My personal stance is I try not to over adjust to winding conditions for the reason that the wind cannot be as severe as originally reported. Things can change. It's the same conditions for all the players, so it could also cause other issues. So for the most part, it's a small factor for me, but it's a very small one. I don't want to I've had too many times where I've overplayed weather factors and it ended up hurting me, where the guy that I wanted to play, I didn't because of wind, and they did really well. So I don't want to put too much weight into that for this tournament, especially.
Yeah, and you guys already know, and if you follow this show regularly, you know that I like to play a weather edge because I think it can give you an advantage if you can get the forecast right over other players. And I think I said 70 miles per hour, 70 kilometers an hour, 70 miles per hour. They're probably not out on the golf course. It's like 40 miles per hour, but it's going to be very, very windy, especially that second day. And I think that factored into my decisions this week for sure.
All right, there you have it. All right, Spence, you got 2 here back to back. Who are you looking at?
I want to say this is, not that it's been working out for me the last couple of weeks, but this is a lot more fun when I have the number 1 pick and I can get who I want rather than it going like the first 3 names off the board that I would have taken. So I don't like this $6,000 range. I alluded to that at the beginning. So very naturally, I will start with a golfer in the $6,000 range and try to get a unique, different build going and kind of have a different dependency here. I'm going to take KH Lee at 6,900. We saw him fall flat at portions of this season. Obviously, now in the fall, we've seen him turn it around. 2 top 14s in his last 3 starts. We have that missed weekend sandwich in between that at the Sanderson Farms, but I think the form more or less looks like it's back to where it was. Like the profile across the board isn't top 30 golfer. He's one of the biggest discrepancies I have in my sheet when it comes to value down in this range. He got a boost inside of my model, given these soft greens that were fast. The recent ball striking told the same story. And then it just came down to how respectable his data appeared when you do get these more extended par 4 setups that I talked about and the ability to score on the par 5s. So Lee was a golfer that I gave out in a matchup against Joel Damon this week. I think there's a lot of ways that you can consider playing KH Lee. I'm just going to try to take a different approach with him here to start off my build. And then I'm going to go with a little bit of chalk on a golfer that I think has been very steady. Like before last week where he ended up losing the streak, he had 30-something. I think it was 33 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better. He's now down to 2 after that. He had a slip up there at one of the first 2 days. But I'm going to take JJ Spawn at 7,900. I think it's a nice spot where the ball striking has really surged over the last couple months. Most of the numbers inside of my model land inside the top 20. There's a 13th place grade for weighted scoring. He's number 1 for overall bogey avoidance and scrambling. Those are really high-end marks when we're looking at a course that's probably only going to get the 15 under par. You're going to need that ability. I think he's one of the golfers where he sees a heightened upside. So I'll go with those 2. I have a lot of money on the table to build. And unfortunately, you guys have all probably built the 3 players that I would be most inclined to want to play along with these names. But I do think it's a steady start for as cheap as this is. And it's going to make it unique, if nothing else, at the end of the day.
So I got to be honest with you, Spence. I'm going to need you to put your picks in because I froze. I didn't hear who you actually took.
Okay, I can put that.
Wow, KH Lee. All right. All right. So I find it interesting. It sounds like you hustled us here in that you told us you're avoiding the lower tier and that it's not, you don't want to play them. Kind of took us out of the lower tier. You got all the top guys picked first, and then you got the guy that you wanted. So way to play the field in the actual draft by hustling us. That was a really good job. How about you, David? Are you playing KH Lee or JJ Spawn at all this week?
I mean, when we both froze, I think Spence actually took Satoshi Kodaira and Trevor Werbelow, but that's fine. We'll let him have KH Lee and JJ Spawn. Yeah, look, of those two, I really like KH Lee. I agree he's absolutely good value. One thing I'll point out with the grass here is that the fairways is oyster grass, and we hardly ever see this on the PGA Tour. TPC Craig Ranch is one of the places that has oyster grass fairways. KH Lee won and defended the AT&T Byron Nelson at that course, and with that grass, it's really quite unique because it's quite sturdy. It's like very, very polarizing, whether golfers like it or hate it. Some people describe it as like hitting every single ball like it's off a tee because it's so sturdy, the ball just kind of sits up. And other people have complained that you can get flyers just unexpectedly and the ball can travel a lot further than they were thinking. So KH Lee's got a very, very good record on that grass type. So I do like the selection there for him at 6,900. I think he's a very obvious value.
Boom. There you have it. KH Lee. All right, audience. You are up. You need to get your picks in. It looks like the pick is in. Unless I'm missing it, is Minwoo Lee at the first double? That's what it looks like to me. Can you guys confirm? All right, that's confirmed. And Minwoo Lee. Spence, how about you? You playing Minwoo Lee at all this week?
So there's a lot to like about him from the scrambling sense of the answer. I think he's going to be very popular, like maybe outside of one name, the most popular player in this $9,000 range. I think part of the problem that I have with this board in general is there are no natural fade candidates for me. And I think that's like pricing is really steady at the top. I don't have a problem with any route anybody wants to go with most of those names. I think it's like the top end is a lot better. And I'm just going to say the, players 8,500 and above, the majority of them are a lot better than the names beneath them. I don't have massive takes, and that's what makes it so difficult to try to construct lineups this week and kind of try to get people completely out of my player pool. I'm probably not going to play him based off of the answer I said, but I don't hate him. So it's just one of those difficult situations.
It's a good point. One thing I'll add, I think just in that same kind of thought track too, is a lot of times my strategy in tournaments like this, especially when you see that there's going to be a higher concentration of ownership, sometimes the best play isn't to necessarily play just a low ownership, but just fade the highest ownership. If you can just get that right, maybe get rid of the top 2 or 3 guys that are pretty high owned out of your pool. That also gives you a lot of leverage on the field. So different ways to think about getting unique and different when thinking about ownership in a field like this. David, how about you? Are you playing Minwoo Lee at all this week?
Yeah, I do like the Minwoo Lee play. Obviously, he spent a lot of time in the Sandbelt in Australia, so he's very used to the high winds. We've seen him play very well in higher winds as well, so I do like that element of his game. 9th this year at the Travelers Championship, and I don't think that's necessarily his best course fit either. So obviously that's a course where Keegan Bradley's won, and he won here, and then Xander Schauffele's got a good record at both of those courses as well. So I think that's a nice correlation. He finished 14th at the Masters on debut as well. So, I mean, look, Minwoo Lee, I think, is in for a very, very big 2024. Won last week in Macau. I wouldn't put too much into that because if he hadn't won that event, that would almost be more concerning because after him, the field was just like so weak. But I do like from that aspect that he's coming in with a week having played and also having acclimatized to the time zone as well.
All right. There you have it. I am now up with my second pick. I went with Morikawa. I have a strategy here. It's risky because I really have like 4 guys I need to land to make this roster work. And if you guys take them, I'm going to be in a bit of trouble here. But I'm going to stick to my plan. I'm going to take Ricky Fowler. Like I said, I'm going stars and scrubs. I think Ricky can go out there and win this tournament. He cooled off a bit at the end of the year. There's been a long break. I think Ricky has turned it around. He had enough time to kind of get right. I'm kind of banking on the fact that Ricky has fully come back to being a top-level player, and it wasn't just a flash in the pan. I think we see that show up this week. So getting 4 days out of Ricky Fowler, I feel good about it, and I'm happy to pay up and balance out the rest of my roster from here. How about you, Spence? You on Ricky at all this week?
I think if there was an ideal situation that I could start a lineup, it would probably be 2. And I mean, this is an obvious answer. These are like the favorites for a reason, but I'd probably start with 2 of Xander, Morikawa, and Fowler. I have 2 outright bets this week. I have Morikawa and Fowler, so you pretty much have my outright card right now, Joel. I like Fowler. Obviously, the recent form hasn't looked so great, but it's one of those answers like would be very similar to what I talked about with JJ Spawn. You make it a more challenging course. Sung Jae Im would be another name that fits into that mold too, where it becomes a more challenging course. All of a sudden, the win equity increases in my model at that venue. We've seen Ricky find success here in the past, so I like the pick a lot.
There we have it. Endorsed. All right, David, you got 2 here on the wheel. You have Xander. Great start. About 7,700 per pick remaining. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, I'll just say with Ricky Fowler that after Xander Schauffele, he's my favorite play. So I do like that pick, and I like the start there. Very tempted to take Sam Ryder here just because I feel that's who Joel's talking about. And I don't actually really want to play Sam Ryder. I'm just kind of tempted just to take him because I know that's like just where Joel wants to go. But I'll stick to my guns and where I was going to play anyway. So I'll start off with Tom Hoge. I think Tom Hoage's found some form again with his approach recently. He's got a very good record here. He finished 17th on debut and then 9th earlier this year at this course. And then he's also got a second at the All White TPC, which is one of the correlation courses that I'm using. Anytime that we see Tom Hoge spiking again with his irons, that's promising for me. He wasn't that far away at the Shriners. He just missed the cut, but I don't necessarily mind that if that means he can get over to Japan a little bit earlier and the climb times a little bit more. So I think for me at 7,800, if you'd placed him at like 82, 83, would not have been surprising for me whatsoever. And he's been playing a lot more golf recently than some of these other guys in this range. And then after that, I'll go up the board and I'm going to go and take Cam Davis, the other Aussie, at 9,500. Again, I like the combination that you're getting in terms of driving distance and accuracy. We also know that Cam Davis tends to like to club down off the tee occasionally. So if he needs to, he can do that. Lots of experience playing in the wind, and he's just been in very, very good form. I think that I spoke about him last week. I think Cam Davis is just actually turning into that golfer we kind of expected him to be. There's always been that talent there. In his last 6 tournaments, he's finished in the top 10 5 times, and it was another one last week, 7th at the Shriners. And in terms of correlation courses, I think TPC Southwind, again, Zoysia Freeways, he was 6th this year and he was 13th the year before on that course. So I do like those correlations. And he's had one look at this course and finished 29th. So it wasn't dreadful last time he was here.
Well, there you have it. You nailed it. Cameron Davis has been popular. I mean, he's been playing well, but he's been popular. I think we've been drafting him a lot on the show. How about you, Spencer? Are you on Cameron Davis this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think and by the way, I mean, I might have like $2,000 left over with the way that this draft has gone right now because maybe I miscalculated the situation with there being not as many players, but I think Cameron Davis makes a ton of sense here. I obviously added a little bit extra distance to the equation and he boosted very high in my model because of that, but 5 top 10 finishes over his last 6 starts. I think he's a supremely talented golfer that has legitimate like major championship win equity in the future. Kind of a lot of the numbers with him, I would compare it. Maybe they're not the same player, but it's kind of that like Wyndham Clark thing where the numbers just started surging inside of my sheet. And, you know, he was over 100 to 1 to win a major. And then all of a sudden he pulls it off. Like I think Cameron Davis is very similar in that regard to where, you know, he's 42nd in the world right now. I legitimately believe he's a top 25 golfer. This feels like an accurate price tag that you might actually be getting a little bit meat left on the bone here, where he could have been in the $10,000 range with the performances that he's had recently. So I like the play. Don't really know how I'm going to round out my lineup now, but I will say this. I mean, in a 78-person field, I think leaving a lot of money on the table is a legitimate strategy. And if you look at my lineup in particular, I will have none of the top win equity players. So if nothing else, it'll be a unique lineup and a different way to think.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. All right. Moving on here to my third pick. David, you nailed it. I mean, I take Ryder every week. I'm not shameful about it. I think this is probably my third or fourth draft in a row taking Ryder. At $7K in this field, great value. Give him to me again. I did move him up in my list. I was planning to take him, but later. But now that you mentioned it, I'm not going to let it slip away. To tune everyone into my strategy, there was a few guys a little bit more expensive that I'm looking at. Ryder being the cheapest here in the 7K range. So I wanted to lock him in. If one of my other guys gets stolen, I kind of have replacements. I don't really have a replacement in this range for Ryder. So it was most important for me to get this value in at this point. But Ryder's playing really well. I mean, a couple things to mention about Ryder. And one of the things that I think is most important, the ball striking has been pretty good. And when Sam Ryder's striking it well, you know he can compete. But it's the putter that I think is most important. We saw him spike last year with some amazing putting performances. And we're starting to see that putter heat up again. So if he has a hot putting week this week, sky's the limit. And he can go out there and compete and get a top 10, if not win the tournament. So I think Sam Ryder's just simply underpriced. David, I know you were thinking about taking him. You didn't. Will you be playing Ryder at all this week?
I mean, first, you're welcome. And yeah, absolutely. I think that Sam Ryder, I memean, he's on a streak at the moment in terms of made cuts, consistently performing really well, including there's like a 7th and a 14th. I like the fact that we're getting guys who are coming in and playing tournaments. It's really difficult to predict when guys haven't played for 2 months. Someone got mentioned recently and it was like, he's not in good form. It's like, well, how do we know he's not in good form? He hasn't played since August, right? So there could be some rust and stuff in there, and Sam Ryder's not going to have that. And he had a 7th year on debut. So if anything, that suggests that he likes this course. The other thing I'd add is that in terms of approach, there's a really high disproportionate number of shots that happen between 150 to 200 yards. And Xander Schauffele leads that list as part of the reason why I took him with the first pick. Sam Ryder is right up there in terms of that bucket range as well. So there's no surprise that he came here and finished 7th on debut, because I think it's right in his wheelhouse. I think he's a really good pick.
There you have it. All right. Listen, the audience pick is in. First of all, great job, audience, being on top of things. Audience, as always, you are the real MVP tonight, especially crushing it. It's a little confusing because it looks, so I'll be honest with you, I thought from the first look that your pick was Champ, but now let a second look. The pick is Shank. It looks like Shank came in first, or was that from your last round? Am I missing something here?
I think it's Cam Champ. I think there was one mention of Shank before you'd finished your selection, so that doesn't count. And then someone sort of like made a comment about Shank, but it looks like Cam Champ is well and truly endorsed by the chat.
I agree with the Champ pick. I was going to say Champ was honestly probably who I was going to take if I didn't decide to move Ryder up, because David mentioned him. So I like Champ too. I think he's a solid pick this week. He's playing well. And we've seen Champ is the ultimate streaky guy. He's in that hot zone where he's playing good golf and he's got the distance that should benefit him on this course. I think this is a really good spot for him. How about you, Spencer? Are you playing Champ at all this week?
I think the price is way too cheap on him, and that's probably why it's indicative right now to where he's about 20% owned. I don't have a problem with him. You just have to be cognizant of that fact that he's going to be probably the most expensive or the highest owned player of anybody 7,900 or less. You could even make the argument that he might be the highest owned player of anyone 8,800 or less, but he probably in reality should be hundreds of dollars more than he is right now with the way that he's playing.
I agree. Spence, you got two now. You're on the wheel. You started with some value, plenty of money to spend. Who are you looking at here?
So with my first pick, I am going to take Vincent Norman. And both of these selections that I'm going to talk about right now, in my opinion, are potential bounce back candidates after they missed the cut in Vegas. Norman's a boomer bust play. I think in a no-cut tournament, that's kind of what you are looking for. High upside potential to shoot himself up the leaderboard. A downside to where this goes in the opposite direction, but a sub 10% golfer that I'm willing to take that risk there. And then I feel lucky, I guess, with the way that this played out, because I was going to take Adam Schenk, and I thought Adam Schenk was off the board, and I was in panic mode trying to figure out how to round out this lineup with literally everybody gone that I could take. I'm going to take Adam Schenk here at $8,000. Like I said, same exact mentality of miss the cut. I think it's a nice bounce back spot for him. See about 14% ownership right now, which is fine, but recent ball striking numbers inside the top 10 of my sheet. The weighted scoring is 11th for him. I think if you get a made cut out of him last week, we have a $9,000 plus golfer. There's a discount that's being had because of that reason.
Yeah, there you have it. Lucky you. You got your guy. He survived. You're also like, I feel like you've taken Schenk in like 4 of our last 5 drafts. You are always on Schenk, and he's playing well. I think it's a solid pick. What about you, David? Are you playing Schenk or Norman this week?
Of those two selections, I think Adam Schenk has the most interest for me for many of the same reason that Spencer's just spoken about. Schenk really elevated his game towards the second half of the season this year. And last week, he missed the cut on the number. So it's not like he was in dreadful form. It was his first start since the Tour Championship. So there might have been a little bit of rust there. It's always really hard to predict when they're coming off their first start of where that game's going to be. And so I think, as been said, a lot of people rule him out because he missed a cut last week when he's been in very, very good form. Particularly his approach play has just gone like on fire for the last kind of like 3 months. So really like that play. I think he's very obvious value at 8,000 and 3 starts here, 22nd, 28th, 16th. So he's played very well. It looks like he's suited, and he's never been coming into those tournaments with the sort of form he is now.
Yeah, it kind of just really quickly goes back to the point that David just talked about. He goes out on Thursday, he shoots 1 over par. He gets it together on Friday to end up missing the cut by 1 after going 3 under. But I mean, if you throw out that first result where he probably was a little bit rusty, this is a really nice bounce back spot if you just can ignore that from your mind.
There you have it. Bounce back spot for Schenk. I like it. I'm in on the pick. Audience, you're back on the clock. You got a couple nominations in, but we're going to need a second that hasn't come in yet. Audience, you have just under 8K per pick. A good start with Sungjae, Minwoo, and Champ. David, what do you think of the audience's team thus far as they wait to get their pick in?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they've got like the benefit for them is they've got a bit of a narrative of like long drivers going on here with some decent putters and guys in form. So I kind of like the Minwoo Cam Champ stack, like going for the Aussie stack kind of makes sense. Obviously, Sandbout players have good record on windy courses, and we're expecting some really high wins these first couple of days. So I don't think that's a bad build whatsoever. I like that they've got kind of this narrative of strong drivers, and I think that's a really interesting strategy when it comes to DFS, right? Like whenever I'm building a lineup, I like to hand build the majority of my lineups for DFS, and the main reason for that is I like to stick to those narratives of like if it is a course where we don't have a ton of strokes gain data. If you've got a lineup where it's all strong drivers, really good around the green game and great putters, if that ends up being the way that the course plays, well, you've got 6 candidates there with really high upside who are probably undervalued. And a lot of people are just going to kind of mix and match, put guys in with salaries who might have completely different styles of play. And I really like going that narrative route of this is what the course is going to play like. And these are the golfers that are going to suit that profile.
I agree. Have that correlation. Make your lineup make sense. It looks like the pick is in. It looks like it's Norin. I'm sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like Norin got the second nod here. Alex Norin, another guy who's been popular. The thing with Norin is more recently, I haven't really seen the great play. I personally am out on Norin this week. Spence, how about you? Are you playing Norin at all?
My answer that I typically give is yes. I'm going to say no for this tournament.
There you have it. Out on Norin. He did have a third at the Shriners, so that did look pretty good. I don't know. I just at 8K, I like Norin as my sneaky guy coming up off the radar. He feels a little bit too on the radar right now. It feels like when it seems Norin, people are on him. It doesn't seem like the spot he pops. So for me, I think it could hurt me. David, how about you? Are you playing Norin at all?
I mean, one thing I would say is that Norin's very, very good in the wind. And a lot of that comes down to his putting and his around the green game. So we are expecting some really high wins those first 2 days. And I think that might play to Norin's advantage.
There you have it. Norin in play. All right. I got 2 picks left. A few guys I'm deciding between on how I'm going to make this roster work. I'm going to start and take Mark Hubbard. Mark Hubbard is, I think you're getting a really good price on Hubbard. Like we said, I'm really focusing my theme on ball strikers. I think it's a second shot course. So I'm trying to find guys that excel at that. Hubbard is definitely one of those. And this could be a spot where he's playing well. I mean, he missed the cut at his last tournament, but he came back and shot a 65 the second day and just missed the cut. So, you know, if you look a little deeper, he's still playing good golf, and I think that can continue this week at 7,600 in this field. I think that's a really good price. How about you, Spence? Are you on Hubbard at all this week?
I think the price is really good for the reason that you mentioned. I think he's extremely boomer bust, and you can even see that with his results recently. Like, he's either giving you a top 20 finish or he's just flat out missing the cut in most of these events. Obviously, he finished near the bottom of the leaderboard here last year when he played the event, whatever you want to take into account there. But it's very high ceiling, low floor sort of an outcome in my mind with Hubbard.
All right. I like it. I like it. David, you got 2 here on the wheel, about 7,200 per pick left. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, just to touch quickly on Hubbard, though, what I would say is last week he missed the cut on the number and he lost 3.5 strokes putting, which was his worst putting performance since February earlier this year. So just bear that in mind, that it was a bit of an outlier in terms of the way that he putted that week compared to usual. And I always like to see some reversion in that kind of spot. So I think that's like a little bit sneaky again, kind of similar to the Schenk play of people might just see the miscut and be out. You know, he's sitting there right next to like Michael Kim, who's priced at 100 to 1 to win the tournament, right? So that tells you right away that there's some value there potentially. I'm going to go, well, I have to go down the board a little bit, but I'm going to go with some locals because we've seen at this course, right? We've seen good history of players coming in, playing on the Japan tour, get overlooked by a lot of people, and then they pop for top 10s or 12th place or a lot of upside there for the Japanese golfers. And there's a lot of national pride in Japan as well. And I think that gets underrated, that it is a big deal for them to have such a high profile tournament here. And they do really want to perform. So starting off is Takumi Kanaya. I think that he's got massive upside, extremely talented young golfer, 25 years old. He's already had 3 wins this season, 2 of those on the Japan tour and 1 over in Oman at the International Series, which actually had a pretty decent field if you go and look at that tournament there. On debut here in 2022, he finished 7th. So he's got a liking for the course, and at 7,200, I like him as a flyer to potentially get a top 20. And then another local for me, Keita Nakajima. So Keita Nakajima, very cheap. Won twice this year as well on the Japan tour, was 12th here last time out in earlier this year. So again, just happy to go down, hope for a top 20 from them. Obviously there's no time zone difference. They know what these golf courses play like. And yeah, both very similar, decent off the tee, and can get hot with the putter as well.
Boom. I love it. I love it. Nakajima was mentioned in the chat a few times. It sounds like the audience is on him. He certainly is a good player. I think for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, David, I think he could be a sneaky play. It doesn't look like the ownership is like that low, so it does look like some people will be playing him. How about you, Spence? You playing Nakajima at all this week?
Yeah, I mentioned at the start there were, roughly 7 players in the $6,000 range that I was fine to put into a build. Nakajima was one of them. I think he's interesting. And when it gets back to my pick, I'll mention one of the other guys that if you really just want to throw a dart on this, I think it's intriguing.
All right. I'm intrigued to see where that goes. It's my pick here. I'm going to take a guy that was just mentioned, who I think is in a really good spot this week. He's playing great golf. That's Michael Kim, 7,500 in the 7K range. His ball striking has been excellent and elite. He's been making putts. His weakness has been his driver for the most part, but I think someone that can get neutralized here this week. So I think Michael Kim has a lot of upside at 7,500. It's a good way to help balance out my kind of stars and scrubs approach. Spencer, how about you? Are you playing Kim at all?
So I'll say this, Joel. he was a very, very slight value on my sheet when comparing him to a price. I think if I was directly comparing, I might rather play Nick Hardy or Callum Tarrant, just to give two names there. But I don't have a problem with the Michael Kim play.
As I'm sure know, I was a very tough decision with him and Tarrant for me. I was kind of decided to do. I love Callum Tarrant. I am like the biggest fan of Callum Tarrant. I play him always. I kind of went with Kim. I just like the recent hot streak that he's been on that kind of made me lean toward him. So that was my thought process, but it was very tight. How about you, David? Are you playing Michael Kim at all this week?
Yeah, I will be playing a lot of Michael Kim this week. I think that people will see that price, 7,500, and then, as I kind of mentioned, like you got guys like Mark Hubbard right there who are PGA Tour, on the PGA Tour performing a lot better than Michael Kim for the most part. And so they'll immediately think that Michael Kim's overpriced. And I think that gives you some opportunities for discounted ownership. But I do really like the play. As I mentioned, that approach bucket from 150 to 200 yards, you're seeing about 1.5 to 2 approach shots per round. More than usual at this course in that bucket. Michael Kim's one of the best on the PGA Tour in that bucket, and he absolutely he spikes in that approach range versus all the others. He's in the 92nd percentile on the PGA in the world this year within that bucket. So he really does tend to like hitting from that range, and he's going to get a lot of shots within that selection as well. So he hasn't performed massively well at the comp courses, but I also think that he is a lower grade golfer, no offense, than Mark Hubbard, but he's coming in a decent form. 18th last week at the Shriners, and then 5th at the Wyndham. And the fact that approach bucket really suits him, I think that that's probably key to his success this week.
There you have it. I love it. I love it. So the audience, you did a great job. The pick is definitely in. Hard to tell based on how things were worded which pick it is. Is it going to be Wallace, or is the pick the other guy whose name I can't pronounce?
Hisatsune.
That's the one. Yeah, that one.
Ryo Hisatsune.
Yeah, that one.
I think it's. I think the chat about Wallace again was speculation when you were making your pick, Joel. The Hisatsune seems to have got a couple of likes. I was tempted to go there when I was looking at Kanai and Nakajima. Hisatsune, we were on 3 out of 4 weeks in the lead up to the Open de France, and then he went and won at 100 to 1 the week after. So that was a little bit gutting because we were really high on the way he was playing on the DP World Tour. Obviously, I covered the DP World Tour pretty extensively, and we'd put him up quite a few times in the lead up to that. So we saw the way his game was trending, and unfortunately, the week that we didn't put him up was when he went and won it. So my only thought with this would be, and again, I hate speculating about narratives, but like he's just won a really big tournament, easily the biggest win of his career. He's 21 years old, massively talented. Does he feel the pressure now, having had that win, to come back to Japan, his home nation, and really perform in front of his locals? And how does he handle that? That becomes my question of, does that all become too much if he now puts this like huge expectation on himself because he's a recent winner and he's expected almost to play well as a star? Does that put too much pressure on him to come out and perform? That would be my only question. But I think he's extremely talented. He's one to watch. I mean, he could be going on a similar trajectory to Tom Kim in a couple of years.
There you have it. Rio it is. Seems like a popular pick. Spencer, how about you? Are you playing Rio at all this week?
I'm going to avoid saying his name. I mean, it sounds like you're sneezing when you say his last name, David. So I almost want to say bless you as it was going on with it. But my model liked him. He is a name that I would consider playing. I'd be curious to check to see where the ownership goes because he's definitely going to probably be on the more popular end. But I am definitely in for anybody who wants to do that. And then when we move into my pick, you want to just randomly throw a dart at the bottom of this board on a golfer that is a former #1 amateur. He hits the ball long. He's 22 years old. I think Taiga Semikawa is interesting as just a dart throw down here who's really cheap. That's going to have about 1% ownership if you're just trying to go with the stars and scrubs approach. And, you stack the top with, let's just say 3 golfers, like near that 9,000 plus range, and you get down into the 6,000 range. He is the name that I would take the shot on if I was going to do it. Now, obviously, with where things stand right now, I would much prefer to have gone a different route. I would love to be in that Fowler or Morikawa or Sungjae or Xander, any of those names, Cameron Davis. Like, I would prefer to round out builds with them. I'm going to start with Hideki. I think Hideki is the best value left on the board. I mean, he's the most expensive player. I have the money to pay up at this point. Former winner of this tournament. I think if his health is fine, this is a nice course fit for him. And then it essentially put me into a spot where, with the money I'd have left, I have $9,000. Sahith Theegala, Eric Cole, Bo Hostler. I think any of those names make somewhat of sense. I guess I actually am going to spend all my money here, and I will go with Sahith Theegala. We have seen him over his last 3 starts go 13th, 15th, win at the Fortinet. Worry a little bit about his inaccuracy off the tee. I could give the same answer about Cole and with Hostler based off of that. So I guess I will go with the player that has shown a little bit more upside and wrap it up with Hideki and Sahith.
I mean, I like it. Those are others in terms of, just getting the most talented golfers on your team. I think you did that right. You got some good players there, guys who are guaranteed 4 days. How about you, David? Are you on Hideki or Sahith this week?
Hideki. I'm on Hideki this week more than Sahith Theegala. I think Theegala is a really good GPP play. I think we're seeing that the upside is there. I don't know if I'd play him on my cash game lineups because I think that there's a lot of volatility there that naturally comes with him. I think Matsuyama we've always got those injury concerns, right? And I'm surprised Joel hasn't taken him by this point because we know how much he loves to take guys with injury concerns. We know how much he loves Matsuyama, but he does seem to have the ability to just turn it on when it comes to Japan. Some of those concerns come from the fact that it's a 4-round no-cut tournament, right? So if you do get a WD, that lineup is just instantly dead. But he does have the ability when it comes to this course or just playing in Japan to really just turn the game on. So I do like the upside that you get with him.
There you have it. Plenty upside for sure. Wouldn't shock me at all if Hideki went out and won this tournament. Spence, that's your team. You spent all your salary. You got some good players on there. I like the look of your squad. Maybe you're warming up to the tournament. Maybe not as disappointing as you were as you opened the show. We'll see. Audience, you got to get your pick in. You got one left. You have $8,300 to spend on your last pick. The nomination is in. I mean, that's definitely the guy I would take. If I could afford him, that's who I would be looking at. So I think it's a really good nomination. It needs to be doubled before it can be confirmed. While the nomination's out there, David, what are your thoughts on Svensson this week?
Yeah, I do really like him. I would have liked him in betting markets as well until he got cut in pretty sharp. So that's always a guide for me, right? If the sharp money's always coming to a player and he's moving in the odds market, obviously once the DraftKings salaries are set, they can't move. So that's something that I'm constantly monitoring is where the odds are moving versus where people are priced in DraftKings. And Svensson really spikes for that. I love the ability with the putter. I think that's going to be really key this week, especially with the wins. You're going to have to make cuts either to avoid bogey and keep the momentum going or to get birdies and get to that kind of minus 15 to minus 18 score that will take to win.
I totally agree. I love Svensson this week. Couldn't make him work with my approach to how I built my roster, but if I had built it a different way, I definitely would have targeted Svensson. How about you, Spence? You playing Svensson this week?
Yeah, and I probably misspoke in reality when I talked about Theegala, Cole, Hostler being the 3. Svensson was also a name I was considering to leave a little bit more money on the table. I think he's a good pick.
There you have it. All right. It is on me with my last and final pick. I am, to be honest with you, I wasn't ready for it to come back to me. So if you guys want to say something real quick while I make the selection, please feel free.
Do you want to have an open conversation? I mean, about what is down there. I mean, obviously there are a lot of players at 7,100 or less to talk about. I mean, where would your mind be at just as an open conversation?
It's a good point. So if it was available, it would have been Champ. That's who I would have taken. Well, that's not an option for me here. So the guys I've really narrowed this pick down to right now are Nate Lashley, which I don't love, but I feel like is probably the safest pick of the bunch that I have left here. Brandon Wu, who I think has some upside, but he really can't putt, which is concerning. And then the last guy I'm considering here is Davis Riley, who is very hit or miss. We haven't seen the best of him recently, but we know the upside is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Riley is obviously very boom or bust. I kind of like Dylan Wu for just throwing out random names. That was a name that popped for me a little bit. Lashley also popped for me. I will say with Lashley, I hate what's happening with him in the betting market. Like, he is a massive underdog to every single person he's against. That hasn't necessarily dissuaded me from moving him away from my player pool, but sometimes when I am so much higher than the market on some of these players, it's at least like worth going back to figure out, is it wrong on my end? And I ran some numbers and I changed up the math a little bit. And he was one of like the precipitous movers down my model when I did that. So I think there might be some more risk on the play than I initially took on when I built my model. But yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, that's kind of where my mentality would be with your pick too.
Well, you know what I've decided? I've decided to go completely rogue. And I'm going to take someone we didn't even mention. I'm going to take Matthew Naismith. Just a little bit cheaper here. I mean, listen, I think they're all the guys that we mentioned there are kind of all in the same vein. I don't think Naismith has the most upside, but I do think of those guys I mentioned, he's probably playing the best golf. The ball striking's there. We know he's a great ball striker. If he can make a few putts, he might be able to sneak into a top 20. So I think he's safe. If I can just get him to get me a decent result with the rest of this team, I think he can cover what I need.
Sure.
How about you, David? Naismith on your radar at all?
He is, yeah, and I was surprised he didn't come up in the original conversation because that would have been one of the names that I would have been considering. Personally, I probably would have gone Lashley, just because within that 150 to 200 yards, again, he's in the top 90% in the world over the last 12 months within that bucket. So he really does spike around that kind of range. And in terms of comp course as well, he had a third at the Old White TPC, which again, there's a lot of form lines going through other players that have played here well to the what was formerly the Greenbrier Classic. So he's had a third there on debut. So I do like that correlation. He played here once and he withdrew, so it's really hard to get any gauge of like where his game was at and how it suited the course. So you can't really read that much into it. But on other ZOZO courses, he has spiked on approach versus what he normally does as well. So that's another really good indicator for me. So I probably would have gone Lashley. In fact, I was even considering actually going Lashley with this final pick here and leaving some money on the table. Where I will go is I'm going to take Kurt Kitayama. Again, I just think he's got massive upside. He's definitely a GPP versus a cash game play. I understand that, but I like the fact that you're getting driving distance, really a lead approach lately, and then around the green game, I think is going to be very key this week, especially with the wins. He has played very well in the wind before, so he does have that going for him. Hasn't had the best record on comp courses, but he has played here once in the 29th, so it wasn't absolutely dreadful. I just like the potential that we have for Kitayama. I think that he's a much better golfer than being priced at 7,400.
There you have it. I love it. I love it. That's the draft. Do us a favor. Hit the like button. Give us a follow before you wrap up tonight. Let us know which team you think's going to win this week. We come back. We crown a winner. We talk smack. It's a lot of fun. Somebody's got to win. Who are you backing? A lot of good teams this week. I think it should be an exciting finish, but we're not done yet. I'm going to pull the draft board down before we wrap up tonight. We do have some first-round leaders. Now, before we dive into it, don't forget, come back into Discord and you sign up with WinDaily before this tournament starts. Now, the tournament's starting tomorrow night, not like in the middle of the night, like 8 o'clock. So get in your lineups in early, check back, confirm the weather, make sure it's accurate. If there is any edge, get your updates in. We will be posting some updates in Discord, some outright tickets as well. But for tonight, we have our first-round leaders. So, Spence, we'll start with you in the first-round leader market. Who are you looking at?
So I will give the 3 that I am on, and then I also just want to touch on the $6,000 players that I would play. Like, I hate giving blanket statements on a show and then not touching on who the players actually were. As far as the first-round leader market goes, Adam Schenk 45-1, JJ Spawn 50-1, Vincent Norman 50-1, and then of those 6 players or so in that $6,000 range that I am taking shots on, it would be Semikawa, it would be Matthew Neesmith, it would be Davis Riley. We've obviously talked about them quite extensively. Be Nakajima, who got mentioned on the show and picked. It'd be my KH Lee pick. And then if you really just want to take a long shot on a player that the form's been really bad, I don't mind Kevin Yu. The ball striker that, can pop. I know it hasn't been great recently, but That's probably the cutoff point for me in the $6,000 range. Like I have very little interest on the other names.
Yeah, but you gave a good amount of names, so you got some interest. You got some spots to look at. Are any of those guys in your first round leader pool?
I guess if I was going to bet one of them, I mean, I think Kevin Yu is very intriguing. If I was going to pick one of those names, I'm trying to keep it limited, so it'll just be Shanks, Spawn, and Norman. I think Riley is kind of one of those boomer bust candidates too, but no, I'm probably not going. Maybe Cageley. Maybe Cageley would be the other name to mention, but I'm going to keep it at Shanks, Spawn, and Norman.
I like it. I like it a lot. How about you, David? Who are you looking at in the first round leader market this week?
I've just got one because I think it's going to the top of the board at standard shelf play, which you can get at $17 or 16 to 1. Morning tea time, wins are going to pick up in the afternoon. He's going off nice and early, and I really can't look past him. And you're getting double the odds for a first round leader versus his odds in the win market. And obviously we know that the cream rises to the top over a 4-round tournament with no cut. So that's probably why you're getting half the odds. But I do feel that if you're getting 16 to 1 on Xander Schauffele to be the first round leader in this market when he's going off in the morning, that's just too generous for me. There's names out there that I would like to add. I really like the Adam Schenk play because he's up in the morning as well. And I thought that was a really good number at 45. But if I'm going a guy at 16 to 1, I feel that's like the only option that you can go, and that's kind of it. So Xander Schauffele, I think he'll be the first round leader.
All right, the best player in the field. I like it. I like it. I got 3 picks, 3 plays for you for the first round leader market. I'm going to start with Joel Dahman at 60 to 1. He's been playing pretty well. Ball striking has been there. I can certainly see him popping for one day. I'm going to go with my staple first round Peter pick, the guy I take every week, Callum Tarrant, who is a good fit. He's playing well. He's 50 to 1. Goes off in the morning. I think some upside there with those odds. And my last pick is Eric Cole at 35 to 1. He's just playing really good. I think books underrate him. I think he's one of the better players in the field. So to get him at 35 to 1 number, I think is a good number. Another morning tee off as well. That is a wrap for tonight. Have some fun with it this week. Watch the tournament. You get to watch it tonight. It's going to be different, a different way to enjoy our wins. Show us your green screens on Sunday. Anything I'm forgetting?
I think maybe we should consider, I'm not saying that we should necessarily do it. We should maybe consider a new sign-off.
Okay.
I'm just going to pitch it to you guys.
Okay.
Tee off sports.
Wow. Sold. There you have it. That's a wrap for us tonight. Tee off
sports.
There you go.